Thank you for watching this episode of the bi-weekly Special Fathers Network Dad's Zoom calls. This episode is on the topic of employment and finding purpose. I'm thrilled to be joined by some of our gifted Special Fathers Network mentor fathers who know a thing or two about this. Before we get started, I'll mention the Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Our objectives are to promote acceptance and inclusion, as well as inspire dads to be more fully engaged on behalf of their children. One of the resources we've created is the Special Fathers Network Dad-to-Dad podcast. A number of those participating here this evening are interviewees. Let's dive in first. I'll ask each of the presenters to make a brief personal statement with a little background about themselves, what their connection is to the topic of employment and special needs, a bit about their family, what they do, and then I'll circle back after they make their brief introductions, and we'll go through a round of a question or two. And then at the end, we'll wrap up with where to find some resources. And if time allows, we'll go through some Q&A. So let's get started. We're going to go in the order of their podcasts. So Randy Lewis, who is podcast dad number 2, you're up first.
In my professional role, I was in charge of supply chain for Walgreens for a long time. I also have a son with autism. And one thing I realized early on, because we used to be able to go into special ed classes when they start usually in early childhood, I would go in there and I would see all these other kids, not necessarily with autism, but I would come out of there saying, gee whiz, we have nothing to worry about compared to the challenges I saw a lot of those other kids had and their parents would have. And I got to thinking about, I stay in bed at night worried about my son, who is now 30. Actually, he's 31. He gets a year older every year. I forget sometimes. Pandemic, can't tell one day from the other. But I was thinking about the 250,000 employees out there. At 5% of that, that's about 25. That's 10,000. That's about 12,000 families out there that just work for the Walgreens company, most of whom work in the stores part-time. If I'm laying in my bed at night worrying about what's going to happen to my son, what are they thinking about? And a job would make the biggest difference. And all of us parents of children with disabilities know we start thinking that, especially guys start thinking about that almost the instant we get the bad news. Because the job can change everything. Friends, security, whole arc of a life. And I got thinking, well, if we couldn't do something about this at Walgreens, we were growing. I had 10,000 people in my division, which was operations and all the distribution centers and transportation. And we were hiring 1,000 people a year. If we couldn't do something, who could? So it started off with just that. And what happened is we ended up, to make a long story short, we launched small at first, but then we went big with the new center that opened up in 2007. And the goal was 1/3 of the workforce would be people with disabilities, same jobs, same pay, side by side, no difference at all. And that was hugely successful. And that idea spread across all 20 centers. And today, people with disabilities represent 20% of the entire workforce across Walgreens distribution centers, 2,000 people. And that's what's happened, and that's kept me interested. I retired in 2012. I've stayed involved in that and also helping companies, but also trying to get them to understand it's not only as good, it's better, because it changed our culture. It made us better managers. They will say, you can go out and see the films about it. It made us different. It also changed lives. Most of those people never had a job. And today I'm working with trying to get communities to adopt a 16 to 22 summer jobs, paid summer jobs program in their communities, because most of these kids are not going to go to New York and be investment bankers. But if we can expose local employers to the gifts and get over this fear and the belief, the prejudice we all have that people with disabilities, it's great if you can hire them if you have the time and the money. No, to try to give them the kids the experience, but also expose employers so there's a place in the community for for all of these kids to be part of the community. And that's my story.
Well, Randy, thank you for the Reader's Digest version of this story. As a reminder, Randy,
30 seconds.
Randy is podcast dad number 2. So viewers or listeners can go to the website and listen to the full story, if you will. And he also gave a wonderful TEDx talk, which I think is worth everyone's time as well. So sticking to the protocol of going in order, Mark Cronin, who was dad, podcast dad number 17, you would be up next.
Good evening, guys. And Randy, I'm a great admirer of what you did at Walgreens. Really made a difference for people. So I co-founded a company called John's Crazy Socks with my son, John, who happens to have Down syndrome. He's the youngest of 3 boys. He insisted we use his name in the company and not Mark's Serious Socks. He's a very commanding young man. Origin stories matter. We started this business in John's last year in school because he was going to hit that proverbial 21-year-old cliff of what do I do when I'm done with school. We looked around. He didn't see any options he liked. And I like to say he's a natural entrepreneur because instead of seeing that as a problem, he saw it as an opportunity. And he turned to me and said, Dad, I want to go into business with you. Which I only half jokingly say is a good thing. That's one of the sons I could go into business with. So we opened in December of 2016 to test the idea. And where we've taken it, what we've built is a social enterprise where we have both a social mission and a business mission, and they feed off of each other. And we're trying to spread happiness by showing what people with differing abilities can do. So it's a little bit of picking up what Randy said. We want to create jobs for people with differing abilities. And in addition to that, we want to show the world, we want to show employers and policymakers, look what can happen here. And we want to encourage people with differing abilities to show them there are jobs out there, there are possibilities, and more specifically, to promote entrepreneurism as an opportunity both for individuals and for families. On the hiring side, our entry-level position, we call a sock wrangler, which is a picker in our pick and pack warehouse. And we're very focused on what people can do, not what they can't do. So the hiring is relatively simple. You come in, we want to make sure you want to be there and you understand the story and the mission and the values. You get trained by a current sock wrangler. Then you have to pass the sock wrangler test, which is pick 6 orders, 30 minutes or less to show us you can do the job. If we have an opening, you pass the test, you got the job. Nothing fancy. Once you're in, we then look to see what else can you do. One thing everybody can do is they can all be performers in the videos we make and participate in the public events that we do, so that we can keep going around showing what I know you saw, Randy, and what Jose, I believe you're going to talk about. Hiring people with differing abilities is good business. It's not altruism. We see an improvement in morale, in productivity, in retention, and recruiting. And every place I speak where people do this, where they hire people with differing abilities, they get the same results. Microsoft in hiring people on the spectrum. I was talking to the managing partner for EY, for Ernst & Young in Dublin. They set up a small program with Trinity College, and it had an immediate impact on the retention in their Dublin office. So part of what we want to do, we don't have any original ideas, is just to go out and let's show what's possible. So does that answer your questions, David?
Mark, thank you for that brief introduction and some background. I'm going to brag on you a little bit because you're more humble than most. Since 2016, when you started the business, you've done online more than $10 million worth of business, not inconsequential. You have 1,600 different types of socks. Now, Walmart doesn't have that many different types of socks, and they do sell a lot more socks just because of the scale of their business. But there's no other company, online or otherwise, that has as many different SKUs as you do. And you do employ dozens and dozens of people with special needs in your business. So it's an exemplary business, and we're just thrilled to have you as part of the network and participating in tonight's call as well. So thank you again. So I'd like to turn to David Friedman, who is podcast dad number 26. And if you have a camera, David, that would be optimal. But if you don't, we would be blessed to have you share your story.
I have both a camera and a microphone, which are coming handy together, actually, better. Yeah, so I'm Dave Friedman, and similar story to lots of the people here. I have a son who's now 25 years old and has autism. And when he turned 14 and a half and we started the transition planning process, we discovered what so many of you have also discovered, which is that the unemployment rate of adults with disabilities is extraordinarily high. And so I was in a business job then, and I looked around for different options, and ultimately ended up starting Autonomy Works back in 2013. We do back office operations work. You can think of it as I don't love the term, but you can think of us as an outsourcing company. So we outsource financial and supply chain processes from companies, and we have a team of about 40 people with autism that do the work. And what we've discovered, I think, again, much like what you've heard from the first couple of people, is that we get exceptional quality and exceptional productivity and unbelievable job retention. I used to employ people in roles like this in a previous job, and we turned over those groups 50% or more a year. And our turnover at Autonomy Works is close to zero. And people are extremely diligent workers, very high quality and very high productivity. And so we are, continuing to grow that business. We operate typically out of a location outside of Chicago, but now obviously everyone is working remotely.
David, thank you for sharing. Thank you for being part of the Zoom. Next, we're going to go to Michael Kohler down in Georgia, and he is the co-founder of something called Special Kneads Treats Bakery. And just for the record, Kneads is K-N-E-A-D-S, which I thought was very creative. So Michael, the Zoom stage is yours.
Okay. Well, I'm Michael. My wife and I have been married 36 years. We have a son with Fragile X syndrome. It's a genetic disorder. He's pretty moderate, fairly high functioning, except in most of your cognitive skills, things like that. He doesn't read. He doesn't write very well. No math or things like that. But he will be 31 in a couple of weeks. And he's kind of the catalyst behind why we do what we do. My wife's been a baker since she was 13. And as the theme goes here, as our son reached that age where he was aging out of county programs, we weren't sure what we were going to do. It kind of came to us that, well, you've always been a baker, so why don't we open a bakery? Even though my last name is Kohler, it's not plumbing or engines. So I wasn't independently wealthy, so we weren't really sure how to do that. I'd worked in corporate, mainly doing industrial equipment, compact construction equipment, things of that nature for most of my career. So I had a logistics background, operations background, but she was the creative one. And she's the one who came up with the name, actually. She said it came to her in a vision one night, woke up the next morning and said, Special Needs and Treats, as the play on words for special needs. And we were kind of like, well, how are we going to do this? And in the beginning, it was really more selfish. We were going to do something just for our son. But I had been involved with some kids playing baseball. I was a baseball commissioner, assistant director for a special populations group here in Georgia. and I had 208 ball players, all with some type of different ability, and everything from nonverbal, limited motor skills, constrained to a wheelchair, all the way up to extremely high functioning. And the theme was the same with every parent. We'd always talk about, well, what are we going to do when our kids age out of school? Some, high enough functioning and being able to go to Kroger or get some of these other jobs to where they can work somewhat independently with limited interaction. But a lot, probably about 80% of my folks are much lower functioning. And we weren't quite sure what to do, but then my wife saw in our, I think it was a little news article or something about a young boy. He was like 9 years old, 5 years old. I think he was 5 years old. And it was his birthday week, and he was at a food co-op getting food because they had been recently homeless. And when they asked him what he wanted for his birthday, he said, "I just want a birthday cake, a real birthday cake." And my wife said, "Well, hey, we can do that." And that's kind of how we run a nonprofit. Special Needs Treats is a 501c3. And our goals were two main priorities. One, getting cakes to kids in the community who couldn't afford them, because birthday cake's a luxury item. And we work with DFACs, foster care, food cooperatives, but then incorporating special needs adults with the education, training, and employment part of every aspect of a bakery. So everything from making dry mixes, making the mixes. We have assistant bakers, decorators, box folders, stickers, laundry folders, you name it. We tried to find something. We even made a major use for cupcake picks. We don't use them in our product, but they're great for throwing them all in a big box and then having them sort them out by color and size and shape and things like that. So we do a lot of that with some of the guys and gals that do require like a job coach or parapro because of their very limited motor skills or their being nonverbal, constrained to a wheelchair or a walker. Because we basically started from a volunteer basis and then looking for the ability, not the disability. What can they do? Kind of like what you said, Mark, is bring them in and just see, do they want to be there? Are they happy to be there? First come, first serve off the list. We have 29 folks now working. We opened in 2014. So we just hit our 7-year mark. And we have 29 folks working, but I have 217 on a waiting list that want to come into work. And funding's been the big thing for us. Our product's not we haven't tapped into shipping yet. We do sweet treats. We do cupcakes and cakes and cookies and things like that. So we have a smaller retail type front, but we've been blessed over the years to where 3.5 years we were in a much smaller location. And now we've been in a 12,000 square foot facility for 3.5 years where we're priming it to basically be like production and training, and then open little storefronts all around us in a nucleus that once trained and employed, we could send the folks closer to home to work in their own hometown, so to speak, but also partner up with other agencies that are in that same town so that it's a win-win. And then there would be a template to pick up, take to another county, take to another state, and keep rolling because there's such a huge need. So that's kind of the broad brush of Special Needs and Treats, myself, and what we've been doing now for right at 7 years.
Michael, thanks for that presentation. And I'll remind you, Michael is podcast dad number 77. So switching gears to our number 5 batter today, Jose Velasco with SAP at Work in Austin, Texas. Podcast dad number 106. The Zoom stage is yours.
Thank you so much for having me, David, and thank you, Michael, Mark, David, and Randy for the incredible trajectory. Michael, I always, when I do a presentation, talk about the SAP Autism at Work program, and as some of you may know, our company is a software company. So we employ folks that are engineers and mathematicians and right. I'm going to start here from the beginning in just a little bit, but I did not want to let this idea go away from me, okay, before I really get started. So every time that I do a presentation, there's a parent out there, there's a family member, there's somebody who says, look, my son or my daughter will not be able to work in a company like SAP. Okay. And what I tell people is that my hope is that other companies like ours, hire people, obviously in the high-tech sector or in the professional services sector, or in those jobs that require maybe an associate's degree or a college degree. But my hope also is that there's other industries that hire people with disabilities, in this case, kids in the autism spectrum. And I always tell them, my hope is that there's a bakery out there that hires bakers that are on the autism spectrum. So I found you today, Michael. Thank you, David, for putting us together. And now I'm going to talk about needs in whenever I have an opportunity to talk about the same thing. Before I didn't have a name, now I have a name. So thank you, Michael. So my name is Jose Velasco, and David, thank you so much for inviting me to speak in the past. I am the father of 2 young adults on the autism spectrum in their late 20s. And we went through this journey like many of you have, of discovery and transformation of our family, of how we did things, of what we believe in, what we strive for. And my last non-autism at work role at SAP was as Vice President of Product Management. So I was deep into the technology sector. And then in 2013, my company, SAP, and for those of you who don't know the company, we make enterprise software, launched a program called Autism at Work. And I was at home sitting in front of my computer doing my daily business when I saw this email at the very top that said autism. And I live in Austin, and I thought maybe I'm a little dyslexic, and it says Austin, right? And I just had to go like this, and read it a second time. It was indeed an email coming from my company talking about autism. And I said, what's the connection here? So they announced the launch of a program called Autism at Work, recognizing that we needed to bring in different perspectives, including the neurodiverse perspective, into the company. So I am proud to be part of this company and part of being a part of a group of leaders in the company that believed in bringing this new dimension of diversity into the organization. So the program, again, started in 2013. I started as a volunteer in the program. And as sometimes happens in life, you become it. So suddenly somebody said, well, if you have the bandwidth to work on the autism program in the United States, because it was going to be a global program, we operate in 190 countries. So I was super enthusiastic about it. And I was so lucky to be able to get 30% of my workload covered by somebody else while I was trying to get the program off the ground in the United States. And I was even luckier when at the conclusion of the incubation period of the program, which was 5 months in the United States, I was approached by one of our board members at SAP who said, this is important for the company. This is really happening. Would you consider doing this on a full-time basis? So believe it or not, there were some people that told me, maybe you can do it as your evening job, but don't leave your career of 30 years in IT and software. But it was one of those moments where you said, it just wouldn't be fair to not put all your energy in what you've learned on business and maybe even the personal experiences that we've had raising 2 young adults on the spectrum to use. And for that reason, I spent the next almost 7 years on this journey of hiring individuals on the autism spectrum. Today, we have the program implemented in 16 countries. And we employ approximately 200 folks on the autism spectrum. We provided about 600 opportunities, which include not only full-time jobs and part-time jobs, but also contractor opportunities whenever we have an opportunity, internships for students as well. And then through a partnership that we have with our internal CSR, corporate social responsibility, we also started doing pilot programs to bring in high school kids that are on the autism spectrum to have the first level of awareness of what it is to work for a company like ours. Not necessarily only in our words as program managers that are neurotypical, but to have our own colleagues who are autistic and who are not much older than these high school students, to tell them their own story, okay? And say, you can be me. You can go to junior college if you're interested in that. If you decide to take a job somewhere right after high school, that's fine too. But you can get a job and you can be employed and you can have that dignity of employment. So it was really transformational. That was one of the things I believe was most impactful about the program. Of course, the hiring and providing somebody a job is truly transformational, right? In so many different facets. It's transformational not only for the person that is being hired and getting their independence and going to work and having that dignity of work, but also for their families. Of course, many of us are always worried, as Randy was saying, about that transition, to something. And transition to work is one of the things that we all hope for, right? So I know that there's a lot of parents out there that are parents of our employees on the autism spectrum who are really happy with the outcomes. We have a retention rate in the program of close to, I would say in the United States, close to 95% over the last 7 years. Which speaks to what Mark was saying, which is that high level of retention. And by what Dave Friedman was saying also is the retention and dedication of the employees. But the transformation is not only for those folks on the spectrum. I think it's a transformation, as Mark was saying, of culture, okay, of the company. It is a different company, okay? And we're fortunate to have had every employee out there that is on the spectrum basically go to a different department. In other words, we don't have like a COE where we have our colleagues on the autism spectrum. So in a way, they become ambassadors of the program as well, okay, in changing the culture of those teams. So today they have jobs in 29 different functions in the company, ranging from very task-oriented type of roles, okay, in shared service center locations, okay, that are more procedural in nature, more predictable type of work, all the way to colleagues who are autistic that are consultants, basically going out to speak to SAP customers and representing our company as autistic individuals. So that's the program and a little bit about myself in a nutshell. Again, thanks, David, and thanks you guys for lending me a few minutes of your time to share the story.
Jose, thanks for the introduction and explanation about the SAP Autism at Work program. Really appreciate that. And our last presenter, before we go into our round of questions, is Mike Carmody of Opportunity Knox. Mike, the Zoom stage is yours.
David, thank you for having me. And it's amazing to be on a Zoom call with all you guys. I'm a huge fan of John Sachs. And when I saw your logo, I was blown away. So congratulations to all you guys for all your hard work. A little background on me, I am one of 5 boys. My youngest brother has Down syndrome. And when he turned 22, we were not completely satisfied with the options that he had. So by trade, I'm a teacher. And so while teaching, myself and a group of people thought we wanted to explore the idea of creating a nonprofit that provides after school and day programs for individuals with developmental disabilities. And so we resurrected Opportunity Knox. And that was 14 years ago. We've been in programs, we've had programs for 10 years. And like you guys were all saying, the idea of our programming is that we want to create opportunities for people to find out who they are, build that confidence, and explore their interests. And during this process, one of the things we learned is that employment was a huge gap that we wanted to try and fill. And so initially we didn't start with that. We started with after school and day programs because that was the need. We started with after school programs and then we moved to day programs. And then the third tier of our programming is social enterprise. So we have a farm to table pickling business. We have a farm where people learn the skills and how to maintain a farm. And then we also have a catering company. where our warriors go out and prepare and serve food at parties. So it's been great. We wanted to create a platform like you guys have all talked about of showing people what our guys are really capable of. In the last tier of what we did is employment. And I think we usually employ between, it's like 10 to 17 right now. So it's been a journey, and we're still, learning how to explore and expand that. So I think on my end, I think that's all I have. So thank you for this opportunity. Like, I'm blown away by all the people on this call.
Mike, thank you. And before you turn off your microphone, you slipped in the word warrior, and I'm familiar with your program, so I know what you're talking about, but I'd like you just to spend a moment on how you refer to the individuals in your program as warriors.
So the name of the organization is called Opportunity Knocks, and the people we serve, we call them warriors, because every day they wake up, with obstacles to kind of move around, and the obstacles that they have every day that they're confronted with that they don't even really think about, they just kind of go and do. And so that's kind of our thing, is we want to continue to create opportunities that they don't have to continue to worry about these things.
Thank you for explaining. So I've got two questions. What I'm proposing to do is that we'll pose the question. I'll give you an opportunity in the same order that you made presentations to respond to the question. Don't feel obligated to repeat what somebody else has suggested, but if you want to reinforce the concept, that's fine. So the question very simply is, what advice would each of you give to a parent to help prepare their son or daughter for the work world? Everybody's situation is different. We heard from big businesses like Walgreens and SAP, to medium-sized businesses, to small businesses. And so it's not one size fits all, but a lot of our parents, the guys in the network for that matter, have a son or daughter who might be 10 or 12 or 16 or 18. Maybe they're in their 20s already, right? So the question again is, what advice can you offer a parent to help prepare their child for the workforce? Randy, back to you.
Well, that stuff really sucked before, so here's the really good stuff. Something that we did not do that well was give our son opportunities to learn things and chores and to develop his executive skills at home, because it's so much easier to do it ourselves than to go through all the time. So it's kind of being a lazy parent is what we were. That's hard, but that pays off. That's something we could all do, and I wish we had done a better job. Now, short of that, reaching out, we all of us like to be able to tell somebody else what they need to do to help us. So that's even better. Is the school system. The school system, folks, they are fantastic. They took our child at 3 and took him through 22, but it really focused on sort of the end of life skills, but mostly it was academics, which is important. If you can get it, if your child can read, it makes a huge difference. But if they, and I found this at Grand Valley State University in Michigan, they had an IEP for life events, in addition to trying to see where they are academically, where are they socially, and that's already exists. So I would recommend to advocate for that in every school system we're out there in. And I would like them to add a track about having a job and those skills, and start helping on that. So that in addition to the academics, and engage the parents from the day they enter the system. You're part of this. We are working together, and our goal for your child is at age 25, let's say, to be completely included. I think that would change a lot of things. And then the last thing is to figure out a summer jobs program, or what Mike's doing, with the support stuff out there. That's what we've done in Barrington. We brought a program down from Canada. If you want the information on it, I'll give it to you later, Dave, and you can distribute it.
Randy, thanks you for sharing. Mark, back to you.
You know, Randy, you spoke about promoting independence, and I think that's essential to what we do as parents for all of our kids. I've started to develop a theory of bad parenting, that the worse a parent you are, the better off your kid is. Because if I'm not going to make you dinner, you're going to figure out how to, make dinner. I'll make an old baseball reference. You just can't drop below the Mendoza line, which is when child services has to take the kid out of the house. But I just jotted a few notes down as you asked the question. One is listen and work with others. We viewed the teachers in the school system as collaborators. They had training we didn't have. Yes, we would make the ultimate call on our child, on, again, all three of our children. But it was incredibly helpful to listen to them and to collaborate. I'll give you a small example. John would, it was as if he spent a lot of time with Hemingway. He had a lot of nouns and verbs, but he missed, as his speech teacher would say, the little words. So she was working on that with him at school. Well, she shared that with us so we could reinforce that at home. It's a relatively simple thing. The second, as I started with, is do everything we can to promote independence. And I think that's true for all of our kids. And what's hard about that, parenting is very humbling. There's so little we can actually do for our kids. And then we want to protect them, particularly if our child has a disability. But we have to let them fail. We have to let them fall down. And that's hard. But that's the only way they're going to be able to get confidence and to learn that they can go up and do things. And promoting independence can be scary and funny too, right? I mean, I'll share two anecdotes. Previously, John would work in an office with me and he'd get dropped off after school and he'd come in and we'd have him do things. And those would include running errands. And I get a call one day from the head of special education in our school district, because a parent had seen John walking around our village and called and was aghast. John Cronin was walking around with no parent and no supervision, and somebody has to speak to those parents. Now, luckily, the head of special education was on the page with us and was telling that parent, but that's what we're trying to do, right? And it can lead to things without politics. We got the inauguration tomorrow. So I had organized the Obama campaign here on Long Island in 07 and 08, and 012 ran a lot of phone banks. And it was a time in 012 we have a phone bank coming into the office, and John points out to me, Dad, you usually get cookies and stuff for the volunteers. You always got to feed people. I said, yeah, we should. What do you want to do? And he said, I'll get them. And there was a grocery store across the street, and we sat down, and he wrote down notes. And we said, what do you think they'd like? And he wrote down chocolate chip cookies, and then I think there was peanut butter or something. And I said, what about sugar? He says, I like sugar. He wrote that down, and then he wrote down sprinkles, and he left, and he came back. And when he came back, he took out of the bag the chocolate chip cookies, the peanut butter cookies, a 5-pound bag of sugar, and a container of sprinkles, because that's what he was going to get. And then evidently it took time to find the bag of sugar, and he had to ask around, but he problem solved to go and get that. You got to let him go and do those things. And then two other things I think of. One is be bold. Something I keep learning in my old age, nobody stops us from doing anything. And I know with John's crazy socks, the wilder the idea we have, the better it seems to be. And we don't have to check ourselves. We don't have to ask anybody for permission. Be bold. And if you have an idea for your son or your daughter or for a project, by all means, go and do it. And be persistent. I can think of people who work with us, and they got the job because somebody was persistent as hell. I could tell you, one of my favorite people there, a young man named Thomas, who's on the autism spectrum. His mom called us up and said, I hear you hire people like my son. I want you to give him a job. And we said, okay, but we're not hiring right now. We don't have any openings. And we'll post on the website when we do, and we'll let people know. She called every day. And sure, Thomas got an interview and an opportunity, and he works with us today. So that's just a few thoughts from together about what we can do.
Mark, thanks for sharing. One of the things that I heard you say, and I've heard it over and over and over, is that don't do for your kids what they can do for themselves, typical or otherwise. And by doing so, inadvertently, we are handicapping our kids, again, whether they're typical or atypical. And that's a really strong message I think we all need to embrace. David Friedman, the Zoom stage is yours again.
Yeah, great. Thanks, David. Yeah, I would echo a lot of what everybody has said already, but to not repeat that, I'll try to add on a couple of other things that we've seen. A couple of things at Autonomy Works that we see with people struggle with when they come to work with us for the first time, and maybe that's a good indicator of things people should learn. One is sort of fairly basic, what I would call executive functioning skills, how to be on time. We actually spend quite a bit of time teaching people how to ask a question. What were you working on? What did you try? What happened? What do you think you should do next, as a way of kind of teaching people problem solving? So any of those kinds of things of helping people work through the inevitable bumps and challenges and roadblocks that you run into in life, but you certainly run into in the job all the time. Those are really important things, because where people sort of struggle and have a hard time is when they struggle with the frustration and the communications around that a lot. It can be very difficult for people. The second thing, which is really important, is transportation. I mean, we live in Chicago, and Chicago has a pretty good public transportation system, and it's awful. I mean, it's really, really hard for people to get out. We're right on a train line, but if you don't live between the two ends of that train line, it's really hard to get out to us. So my son doesn't drive, but some of our associates do. But just getting comfortable with the trains and the buses, and if there's a shared transportation system in your county, your location, that kind of stuff is really helpful, because long term, even medium term, I mean, you're not going to be able to drive them around all the time, and so having some sort of ability to navigate the transportation, but Uber, whatever it is, the transportation network is really, really valuable, I think. There are two sources. People have touched on some of these today. Two things where I think you can learn a lot of those. The first is schools. Transition program, the time between when a student is 18 and 22. Those, at least where we are, they have dedicated sort of separate school programs, and those are really valuable for focusing on those kinds of volunteer experiences and working in different things and trying to learn all those basic things, as well as all the transportation. So taking advantage of that sort of block of time from 18 to 22, I think, is really valuable. And the second thing, and Michael, you talked about this a little bit before, but Special Olympics. I mean, you talked about some of the therapeutic recreation, but my son's been really involved in Special Olympics, and it's a great program for teaching turn taking and communication and teamwork and dealing with frustration and a lot of those kinds of skills that are super valuable, not just on the basketball court, but also in the workplace. So in terms of tools where those skills can be learned without it having to always be the parent teaching them, which is, as we all know, kind of tiring at times, it's great to get other programs and other experiences that can do that.
David, thank you for sharing. Mike, back to you, Mike Kohler.
Well, at this point, I guess that's the easy part, coming in like fifth, because pretty much everything's already been said. You kind of stole my thunder there, David. I've always used, anytime I talk to new special needs parents or even local, older special needs parents, is, don't handicap your child. Just because your child has a handicap, don't handicap them by, it's a resounding theme here. They need to make the mistakes. They need to go through the decisions, rather than, oh, it's okay, there's special needs, this, that, and the other. But the other thing that really stuck out to me as we go through our journey is to the parents of the special needs, when they get the opportunities to have employment, it's a real job. Yes, we have day programs, and they're used to day programs, but it seems like as they start into the job market, a lot of times the parents will treat it more so like a day program, not as a real job. In that, I think you said it, David, to where being on time, taking responsibility for there. And the things that we've encountered is that it's not our guys and gals' fault, because they are at the mercy of someone to bring them to work. They don't drive. Someone to make sure they come to work. They want to come, but oh, well, we have this planned instead, so that's an inconvenience for me to get them to work, so they're not going to come in this week. And I don't want to reprimand or penalize the employee, because they're awesome, and they want to be there. But I guess my one thing, the big thing that sticks out to me, to parents, beyond what's already been said, is when those opportunities do come and the employment opportunities are there, they're being paid to do a job. Whether you think it's beneath you or them, it's a job. They're getting paid. Treat it like a real job. That might be a little harsh, but that's one of the things that we encounter a lot of, is the kids take pride in it. And I call them kids, but I got some that are as old as I am, which I'm fairly old. I got a 31-year-old. Again, just to maybe drive the point home, is regardless of the disability, let's not focus on that. Let's focus on what the abilities are. I get a lot of that from a lot of parents. A lot of the folks that we deal with, people have guardianship because of the mental capacity or things of that nature. So I'm not sure where that lies in some of the different jobs that I've heard about here, but we have to, when we interview, we try and interview the individual, but at the same time, if there's guardianship involved, we somewhat interview the guardian as well, and try to drive these points home that this is a job. You will have a schedule. You need to abide by that schedule, and these are the tasks we're going to try. And then like Mark was saying, where he starts with sock wranglers. I love that. That's a great job thing, sock wrangler. We start, with what capacity we can see, what do they think they like, and then we start trying to branch out from there. We've been fortunate enough, I'm going to toot the horn of one of our guys who we've had for about 6 years, Ian. He's autistic, and he wouldn't talk to people, didn't like interactions, had a lot of sensory issues. So part of our tasks were to help him get over a lot of those. And just last weekend, he graduated from college. He actually moved up through the ranks from, greeter or towel folder to assistant baker to washing dishes to he now runs front of house. When he comes in, I go in the back, he opens the front, he runs the front, deals with customers. He started going to school. He now drives. And his mom, I think it was 2 years ago, called us bawling saying, I can't, I may actually have grandkids someday. He actually talked to a girl. He asked her to go get donuts, so there's positives that come out. So don't handicap our kids. You never know where they're going to end up and the impacts they're going to have on other lives as well. I think that was mentioned earlier, is that it's not just the individual, it's those around them. I think what Walgreens, Randy, that every time I hear it, I'm just amazed at how that goes, and looking at how we can continue to grow our program and try and incorporate those same methodologies to where it's a tag team. You know, here's the task, you know, and team them up and get it rolling. But you know, there's not a whole lot to add, because the group before me pretty well hit a lot of the nails right on the head.
Michael, thanks for sharing. And I think what I heard you say that came through loud and clear is that, you know, there's a support team in some cases that's required, right? Whether it's family or others, to help them stay the course, right? Help them succeed. And it's not like a day program where you just drop them off and pick them up type of thing. So again, thanks for emphasizing that. Jose, back to you.
Okay, that was my dog barking. Sorry about that. Was trying to shoo him away. Okay, so I think that all the commentary that we've heard has been right on. I mean, spot on. It's been great. I think we all agree. Don't handicap your child. Is probably the single best one. The only addition that I have to what we can do as parents is the volunteering part. It was something that was really great for us. Let me share with you a little bit of our story. My son, since he's been, I don't know, 2 years old, has had this incredible interest in trains and railroads. And everything that we did when he was little, all the way to now that he's 27, when we talk about vacations or activities, a great deal of it revolves around planning a trip where there's a train involved. Okay, so what we did very early on is take him out and see the world. And, you know, even if it was just the local tourist railroad that we have here in Austin, Texas, it is a volunteer run association. And the guys that are running the train, one is a doctor, the other one is a systems analyst, and they go choo-choo on the weekends, right? They are the ones that are driving the train and fixing the train, and they go out and collect money and they buy spare parts, and people go on the weekends and enjoy the trains. And it's a really great family adventure. So I took my son when he was about 13 years old, 12 or 13 years old, and he absolutely loved it. Okay, he said, I want to do this and I want to become a volunteer, but he was not of the right age at the time. So I think that 14 was the time when they accepted volunteers. And on his 14th birthday, we went straight there and have him registered. And I remember that they told us, you know, we had to wear a white shirt because it was a we thing. Okay, that's something that is super important. It was not just going and dropping off my son. We came as a package. Okay, so if they were going to hire one, they would hire the two of us. And that's basically what we told them, right? If you need a greeter, you're going to get two greeters. If you need somebody serving sodas, you're going to get two people serving sodas, right? And that really was, I think, a really good approach. It helped us a lot. And with his confidence, he was a little bit hesitant at the beginning. So they gave us a red vest and they gave us a name tag. I mean, it was really meaningful for him to see his name printed on a tag with a clip on, and that was his job. Okay, and we'd go there on the weekends and we would greet passengers coming into the train, and then we would go on the car. We were responsible for one of the cars, one of the fancy ones that serve sodas and refreshments. And I had to teach my son how to basically pour a soda and walk in a wobbling old train, right? Because these are old trains, without spilling the soda, and then serving the drink and putting a napkin to it. Just very simple things for you and me, but for him, there were things that he was just learning from scratch completely, right? After a while, he gained more confidence. So I kind of said, "Oh, I'm gonna be in the back office serving the drinks for him to go out and take to the front." And then in one case, they asked us to do the announcements because there was a person that would come in with a megaphone and just talk about the emergency exits and so on the train. and they changed the procedure, and now the car attendants were the ones that were supposed to do the announcements. So I did it one time, and I told my son, you know, we're partners. You have to do it the next time. And he stutters a lot. Okay. So something that would take somebody about 2 or 3 minutes, it took him about 6 to 7 minutes to get through one sheet of paper. But he finished it and he did it. Okay. And at the end of that day, people poured a lot of, I won't say a lot of money, but you know, a good $100 that he promptly donated to the training. Okay, as one of the things that you know, basically the money that they gave him, he donated to the railroad. The next time we went back, I mean, we're just showing up and we were getting into the groove. I mean, we're understanding what the job was, and he was doing a lot of it. But they told us, look, we had one of the car attendants that is sick. He just called in. So Jose Jr. goes in that car and Jose Sr. goes in that other car. And that's the day when he became responsible for a full car by himself, okay, full of people. And he had to make the announcements and pour the drinks and clean the tables and do everything. And at the end of that, he came, you know, we saw each other at the end of the shift, which was about 4 hours. I would go and check on him, right? Make sure that he was okay in the other car. But it was an incredibly rewarding experience, and really volunteering was what got us out of the house, what got him to be in front of people, to have his first job. That was his real first job, right? He didn't get paid for it, but it was indeed his first job. Temple Grandin always says, get a paper route, okay, or the equivalent of a paper route. Start your own business, you know, walk the neighbor's dog. Okay, that's the job. Okay, where if you make a commitment to be there at 9 o'clock to walk the dog, you have to be on schedule, right? So offer the services to your neighbors. They know about you. They know who you are. They know your kid. Go with your kid. Volunteer. Get paid. Get into the rigor. Tell your kid, look, we have to go and walk the dog. It's your job, right? And that is, in my opinion, a great advice from Temple. But anyway, just a different perspective on the same topic.
Jose, thanks for the insights. I love the stories. And Mike, Carmody, if it wasn't hard enough for batter number 3, 4, or 5, you're batter number 6. The Zoom stage is yours.
I would say, only to add, like for me and my brother, I would always just bring him everywhere. So like building a community in our neighborhood has allowed him to have a lot of opportunities, and a lot of his friends to kind of find opportunities and jobs. And like, I encourage families to be out with their son or daughter and experience the community and build those relationships, because the relationships are the only way that we have been able to do what we can do, is the relationships and just the hand-to-hand, the face-to-face. Those have been the biggest things, like to add on to all these great things you guys have said. I think the biggest thing is the networking.
Mike, thanks for sharing. I'm going to call an audible. I was hoping to go through a second round of questions and then circle back and do resources after that. But what I'm going to do is suggest that I'll pose one more question, and I'll ask, once you're done responding to the question, that if there's a resource that you'd like to point our viewers to, that we'll include in what I'll call the show notes with some additional information. So it'll be easy for anybody that's watching this video to follow up. So the question simply is, and not to focus on the negative, but I think one of the fears that parents have is that it's not going to work out, right? They're going to put their child in a situation that they're not prepared for. They're going to be embarrassed. Either the child or the parent is going to be embarrassed. And what advice can you give that parent of helping them overcome the fear of failure? So Randy, back to you. There's the question, and then if there's a resource or resources that you'd like to share.
Well, it's interesting. It's the other way. When we hired people with disabilities, the biggest concern of managers was that they would make a mistake working with people with disabilities. And so how we had to get around that is say, hey, we make mistakes all the time around here on different things. So what do we do when that happens? Well, we correct it and move on. Yeah, that's what we do. Oh, by the way, nothing ventured, nothing gained. The one thing I realized, Austin would get into everything. I remember one time at the library, and I was standing over, so everybody else had a great story, so I got one good story. So we were at the library, and I was doing stuff, and Austin was wandering around wherever he does. And then I see, coming, because our shelves are real low, I see Austin coming to me all the way across the library there, and this mad librarian woman, you know how they look, get standard glasses and the thing around their neck, this standard one, pursuing him. And I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be good. So she gets there, and Austin really didn't speak that much then. He was probably 8 or 9 or 10 maybe. He only probably had a very limited vocabulary. And she gets over and she says, well, is this your son? I went, yes, it is. And I said, his name's Austin. He said, well, he was on the phone. He got on the phone over there and called 911, and he said, somebody dead. And so the police are coming. I just want you to know, so we need to wait here. And I said, well, my son has autism. He probably learned 911 in class. They were probably talking about it. So he just did that. But I'll take care of it. But the police come in. And oh, by the way, he loves police. So that's going to be great for Austin. But hope they don't come in a bad mood. But let's chill out. So then this policeman comes in. At the time, he was probably 20 years older than me. He comes in. I'm sure he's really digging this, what he's going to do, come to the library, talk to a kid about calling. And so he gets there, and I explain the situation to him. He has autism, and blah, blah, blah. But he still had to feel obligated, to kind of give him the lecture, which I said, okay, this is going to be good. And he tries to explain to Austin how things are going to be. Those things are going to happen. I've had Austin come up to a stranger behind him too close and them turn around and say, move away from me, brat. I've had people in restaurants as he wandered through. Guess what? It's going to happen. They don't know the story. If they could walk a mile in our shoes, they would know about it. And most people, when they find out about it, say, I'm sorry, my son has autism. He didn't mean anything. The other thing is, like, Austin loves to talk about when he gets around Black people that we're all equal. So every time we get on an elevator with a Black person, I'd be standing there and Austin would be saying, Dad, we're all equal. To which I would turn to him and say, yes, we are. And then I could feel the eyes in the back of my back. And so the people were staring at me saying, I wonder why son feels compelled to say that. That would happen over. Hey, there's so many things that happen out there. It's everybody. There's a bias about people with disability, but it's the only bias that's wrapped in pity and love when they find out, because everybody knows somebody like that. So, and if we don't give them the chance, we deny them the opportunity to do things they would never do. Austin has learned so much by having police come up to him. Oh, I'll tell you one more story. He's at the airport. He drives. His job, like Jose was talking about, he would drive neighbors to the airport for $20. Cab would cost $50. So he was a great deal. And he didn't talk. So that was even better. But one time he's going to pick up my wife, and he pulls in an O'Hare lot where you wait. And he always likes to walk around, and he likes to rock. And so guess what? People call the police on him. Well, Austin knows every police officer in the world. This guy shows up and he sees his name tag and he asks him about another policeman. Now, my wife is up there waiting. And Austin's he's not coming. She talks to him a little bit. Something's wrong. And then she sees this police car come in with lights on, an Austin car right behind it. She gets out and asks the policeman what's the problem. He says, no problem. And then we tell Austin was so happy because he got frisks. And the guy says, well, do you have any bullets? And Austin likes to use odd words. And like, do you have a weapon? Austin said, he asked me if I had any bullets. those are the opportunities we get to educate the whole world about it too. I'm sorry it took so long.
Randy, thank you so much. I was dying laughing with your comments. Thanks for sharing those stories. Jose, we're going to do an audible. We're going to go to you.
Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I regretfully have to move on in a few minutes to another commitment, guys. But I guess the question, David, was around fear of failure. Is that correct? Yeah, I think that's something that is alive in a lot of us all the time for obvious reasons. I remember when our kids were young and we were in the process of trying things out, both of them being on the spectrum. The big mission would be to go to a Chili's, okay, and come out, without any issues related to the kids, having some problem, some sort with the noise, the sound sensor, but we had to keep trying, and if it was not Chili's, it had maybe another restaurant, Burger King, whatever, but to go out and start seeing the world a little bit more. One time we decided that it would be a good idea for the kids to be enrolled in gymnastics, and that didn't work out very well. My son was extremely distracted, and we were watching from the stands, and he was just running around all over the place. And well, they told us that it may be different sport, okay? And then I think that the big one for us was I came up with a brilliant idea after that one event to my wife, and I said, we need to go to Disneyland. And of course, we live in Austin, and Disneyland is not close by, right? So we had to board the plane, which was going to be a completely new experience, and we had to go through the whole social story of what the airport looked like, and there's going to be people, and there's going to be sound, there's going to be airplanes. And my wife, she said, "Okay, let's do it. Let's give it a try." So it happened to be one of the most memorable trips for everybody, for the kids, for us. But to your point, David, we were really, really afraid of failing. Okay, we had not done so well in smaller things before, but we said, well, let's just keep trying. Let's go out and let's do it again. Something will work out. A couple of years later, in a very accidental way, we also found that martial arts would probably be a good opportunity for them. And we didn't rationalize it too well as to why. We just simply knew that there was a good teacher that had kids with disabilities in his martial arts school. So we gave it a try, and we lasted the first class, and it went out okay. I mean, not perfect, but it was okay. And they got their uniform, and they felt proud of their uniform, and they were involved. They were probably 10 years old and 12 years old. But my daughter, who is on the spectrum, has a gifted memory, as many people in the spectrum have. And one thing that she was able to do was memorize the katas, the movements, before anybody else. So suddenly we found that there was something that she excelled at more so than the other kids. So the teacher, knowing where she was coming from, also tried to boost her confidence, would invite her, Ms. Velasco. Ms. Velasco was 12 years old. Do you want to come to the front of the class and teach the kata for us today? Okay, and she would go out and do her movements, and that did a lot for her, for herself, image and self-confidence. Interesting enough, a few years later, when she was already a black belt, she was still being invited to do that, and I joined the martial arts school as well. So I had to bow to my daughter and say, Ms. Velasco, and I was at the bottom of the pit. I was a white belt. She was a black belt, and that didn't last very long. But it was a great thing. But again, if we don't try, some things didn't work out at all. I mean, they were not really good experiences for anybody. But it happens to everybody. You know, we all fail, and we move on and we try new things. So what I would say to parents is, you know, give it a shot, give it a try. And one thing or two or three or four or five will work out really well.
Jose, thanks for sharing. Very enlightening. Mark, back to you.
Well, one caution, we always have to be careful to comment on somebody else's parenting. People are very sensitive, and you know I take the view we get to screw up our kids on our own, and you get to screw up your kids on your own. But I know when it comes to our business, the best thing we can do is demonstrate what we do. So when people come in and to work at our place, you have to be able to work on your own. A job coach can bring you in, but cannot work side by side. You have to be able to work on your own. There are other places that have other alternatives, but that's the way we're set up. So the best and most convincing thing is for a parent to come in and see all these people working on their own, that there's no damage, you know, that everybody's happy. And second, we do have rules. You know, you have to leave you have to stay. You can stay here. You can press your fingers against the glass and look, but you can't be with your child all day. And so once they see the example, you know, then they can understand some of the things we've already heard of, you know, I've had this conversation with people. They're worried about what happened with their child. Okay, you had other children. What happened with them? Or think back in your own life. Boy, did I do some aggressively stupid things. And yet I've lived to 63. Then that's true for all of us. Well, why would it be any different for my child because he has Down syndrome or because he's on the spectrum or has Fragile X? So, you know, a lot of it, it's hard. You have to be careful about correcting somebody, and it's showing through example.
Mark, words of wisdom. Thank you for sharing. David, back to you.
Yeah, thanks. And it's always great to hear this. Everybody's had really good ideas. And I'd echo one thing, Mark. You know, when we at Autonomy Works, we also are very clear that the employee works it for us, not the parent. And so we don't really, I mean, we talk to the parents, but we don't talk to the parents. I mean, if someone needs a schedule change, if they're going on vacation, we expect the kid to come and bring notice saying they're going on vacation. We don't want the parents to call us. We don't, and that's a big part of sort of building that that identity, that sort of confidence that they need. But when it comes to sort of thinking about failure, you know, we've all, I'm sure can tell epic stories of our own personal failure. And in our other kids, you know, I have 3 daughters, and we've seen them make good and bad choices along the way, lots and lots of times. What I find for me personally that works really well with my son is when I worry about the future, I look back I try to not look back 1 week or 1 month or 1 year. I try to look back 5 years, and I think about what was he doing 5 years ago, and how much now does he do that's so much different and more powerful and more independent than it was then. And if he's accomplished that in the last 5 years, why won't he just accomplish that in the next 5 years? Like the same level of change. And so if you take kind of a little bit of a longer view of it, I find it kind of, you see the trajectory in it. And then okay, there's a trajectory. It's maybe not the same as everybody else's, but there's a trajectory, and no reason that won't continue going forward. And so, I mean, that would be sort of to kind of change your view from not always thinking just about the next interaction, but thinking about sort of how it grows over time. And you'd also asked David about resources. So one thought, and this is a mixed bag, but I would recommend it to everybody to talk to the vocational rehabilitation organization in your state. Some of them are really good, and some of them aren't, but they're definitely a place to start, connecting to resources that are out there. I mean, in Illinois, they're not amazing, but they at least can start, if you're sort of starting down the journey of looking for jobs, they can be a place that can start to give you some connections in some direction. So, again, may not be the best place ultimately, but they can at least be a start, I think, for people.
David, thanks for sharing. Michael Kohler, back to you.
There we go. Just to, reiterate, and maybe even just in a little different wording is, your original question is, I'm fearful that my child will fail. I think every single parent who's on here, who sees this or will listen to this in the future, you're not perfect. I know I'm not. And, like what you said, Mark, and even I think Randy mentioned it, we're going to fail. That's the only way you learn. That's the only way you grow. And that's how you can do more. Give your kid the same chances that you had. Let them fail. They're going to. I've failed a lot for many, many years, and I'm sure I'm going to fail some more because I'm not done yet. I love my church because my church has this great big message as soon as you walk in the door that says, we're not perfect and we don't expect you to be, because I am far from it. And as far as to the parents, that's the one thing I would say is give your kid the same chance that you had to fail, because that's how you learned, that's how you grew. That may even be how and why you're doing what you do today because of previous failures. So definitely give them that same chance. Let them go. They're not, the first job may be a raving success and that's the only job they have forever, but I think those times are long gone. My dad worked at the same place for, I think, 30 years. The average tenure in corporate America, 5 to 7 in most cases. I know a lot of us on here had some lengthy jobs, but we're sometimes that's the exception to the norm. I don't know that I could sit here and count how many jobs I've had over the years. I know as I got older, because of those previous failures, I was able to go further in my career choices and to do more in those because of the previous failures, learning from those mistakes. And it's the same thing for our guys and gals is that. And then to echo what David said about Voc Rehab, good, bad, or indifferent, no matter what it is in your area, it's still a great resource because they are supposed to be looking for ways to help your kids grow, learn social skills, those interaction skills, the day programs, even similar to what, Mike was talking about and what they do. There's a lot of different things out there that get those interactions. I think one of ours was called Strive and Adapt here in Georgia. And Bradley's last 4 years after he turned 18 in high school was part of that program, to where they would go out into the community and they would do different jobs like TJ Maxx, Marshalls, Walmart, local grocery stores, things like that. Use those tools. Don't look at it as if they're not going to get a job there because they always have kids coming through the program, because it gives them that exposure. It gives them those opportunities to learn that teamwork concept, that empowerment, a sense of responsibility, and take ownership. But again, just to kind of go back to what I started with, yeah, they're going to fail. Maybe many times, and so do we. So don't rob them of that either, because that's part of the progression. That's part of the opportunity for them to grow into, adults and into the individuals that they're destined to become.
Michael, words of wisdom. Thanks again for sharing. Mike Carmody, back to you.
There were a lot of great things said. I think I have an example. Like my brother had a job. He was volunteering, and he did something where it was totally inappropriate, and he got let go. And I had to go. I was one of the people who went and go talk to the people. And I think one of the things I took from that was, like, number one, yes, like, if this is what you did, you got to go. And number two, it's okay. Like, you tried, it's okay. Let's try something different. And I talked to my parents about that, but I think a lot of you guys said this, is this, all you can do is try. And if something doesn't work, we try something else. So that's what I have.
Mike, thank you. So I just want to say thank you to all the dads who are with us tonight, those that presented. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time to open it up for a Q&A, but I'm hoping that those that are interested in following up with any of the presenters can go online, listen to the podcast interview that they've done, and we try to make it as easy as possible for people to connect with one another. So, thank you for watching the latest episode of the bi-weekly Special Fathers Network Dad's Dad Zoom podcast. If you haven't already done so, please check out the 21st Century Dad's website. Subscribe to the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast, and be sure to check out the YouTube videos of past Special Fathers Network Dad Zoom calls. We hope to see you again soon. Thanks again.